He sat in the courtroom, heart pounding as she took the stand. Her voice was steady, her gaze unwavering. She recounted events that painted him as the villain, each word a dagger to his character. The jury listened intently, absorbing every detail of her testimony. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. The woman he once trusted was now accusing him of actions he never committed. The weight of her words pressed down on him, threatening to crush his spirit. But he knew the truth. And he had proof. Months earlier, anticipating potential disputes, he had installed a security camera in his home office. It was a precautionary measure, meant to ensure transparency and safety. He never imagined it would become his lifeline. As her testimony concluded, his attorney stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, we have video evidence that contradicts the witness's statements." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. The judge nodded, allowing the evidence to be presented. The footage played, revealing a scene starkly different from her account. It showed a calm conversation, devoid of the aggression she described. The jury watched, eyes wide, as the truth unfolded before them. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her facade cracking. The contrast between her words and the video was undeniable. The judge called for a recess, and the courtroom emptied. Outside, he sat alone, reflecting on the ordeal. The betrayal stung, but he felt a sense of vindication. His foresight had saved him. This experience taught him the importance of self-discipline and mindfulness. By staying calm and collecting evidence, he protected himself from false accusations. It was a lesson in the power of preparation and the value of truth. He realized that in life, distractions and deceit can cloud judgment. But by focusing on integrity and personal growth, one can navigate even the most challenging situations. As the trial resumed, the atmosphere had shifted. The jury viewed her testimony with skepticism, and his credibility was restored. In the end, justice prevailed. The false accusations were dismissed, and he walked out of the courtroom with his head held high. This experience became a turning point in his life. He dedicated himself to helping others understand the importance of self-awareness and preparation. Through workshops and speaking engagements, he shared his story, inspiring others to prioritize truth and personal growth. His journey serves as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, staying true to oneself and focusing on meaningful growth can lead to triumph. Weeks after the trial, his life began to regain a sense of normalcy. But he was not the same man who had first walked into that courtroom. Something inside him had changed. He had come face to face with one of the most painful human experiences, being betrayed by someone you once trusted. But instead of letting it make him bitter, he chose something else: growth. He deleted her number, not out of spite, but as a symbol that he was no longer holding on to what was false. The pain had taught him something that comfort never could: clarity. He began to see how easily people can be misled, not just by others, but by their own emotions. And how often people let anger take over before they even have the facts. He thought about all the times he'd nearly confronted her during the legal process, all the times he had wanted to lash out, scream, accuse. But he didn't. He waited. He trusted the process. And that video, that one choice to prepare instead of explode, that's what saved him. That choice became a foundation for how he would live from that day forward. He started journaling each morning. Just 5 minutes. He'd wake up, sit by the window, and write down his thoughts before the day began. What am I feeling? What do I want to accomplish? What is distracting me? Slowly, his entries evolved from thoughts of the court and betrayal to thoughts of hope, discipline, and service. He returned to work not just as an employee, but as a mentor. He noticed when younger colleagues looked overwhelmed, and he started offering quiet guidance. Not grand speeches, just small truths he'd learned. You're not your worst moment. Sometimes, silence is the strongest defense. Protect your peace. Don't trade it for temporary revenge. People listened. They respected him, not because he bragged about what he'd been through, but because he carried a calm strength that only life experience can teach. They could sense that he wasn't pretending to be wise. He had earned it. One day, a young woman from the office asked if he could speak at a local youth center. "Just share your story," she said. "They need to hear from someone real." He hesitated at first. Who was he to give advice? But then he remembered the courtroom, the look on the jurors' faces when the truth came out, and he remembered the long nights, doubting himself, replaying every moment. If he could spare someone else that pain, he had to try. At the youth center, he didn't dramatize anything. He just told the truth, that sometimes people lie, sometimes even people you love, that life will test you in ways you don't expect, but that those moments, when everything seems stacked against you, are the very moments that shape who you'll become. He ended with this: "You may not control what others say about you, but you can always control who you are. And if you stay true to that, the truth will find a way." The room was silent. Then, slowly, applause. One of the teens came up afterward and said, "I think I needed to hear that more than I knew." It became a new path for him. Not one he had planned, but one that felt right. He wasn't just a man who had won a case. He was someone who had turned pain into purpose. The experience in court, though painful, was a gift in disguise. It taught him how to breathe in chaos, how to focus on the facts, and how to hold his dignity when others tried to steal it. And maybe most importantly, it taught him this: you don't have to scream your truth for it to be real. Sometimes all it takes is patience, preparation, and the courage to stand still when the storm comes. That is how you win, not just in court, but in life. In the months that followed, his reputation quietly grew, not as someone famous, but as someone dependable. The kind of person people called when life felt overwhelming. Friends, co-workers, even strangers he met through volunteer work started reaching out. They didn't always want advice. Sometimes they just needed someone who would listen without judgment. And that had become his superpower: deep listening. One evening, after speaking at a local mentorship event, an older man approached him in the parking lot. He wore a worn jacket and had lines on his face that told stories of hard years. He said, "You remind me of my younger self. Only difference is, I let the bitterness eat me alive. You didn't. That's rare." It wasn't the praise that struck him, it was the reflection. He realized how easily his story could have gone another way. If he had exploded in that courtroom, if he hadn't recorded the video, if he had chased revenge instead of truth, if he had let his ego speak instead of his discipline, he could have become the villain in someone else's story. But he chose not to. That night he sat with his journal and wrote something different, not about the past or his pain, but a list of what he wanted to live by from that moment on. As he closed the journal, he smiled, not because life was perfect. It wasn't. There were still days of doubt, and nights when memories crept in, but now he had a compass. Then one day he was walking past the courthouse where it had all gone down. He didn't plan to stop, but something made him pause. Across the street he saw her, the woman who had lied under oath. She was sitting, alone on a bench, staring at the same building. For a split second their eyes met. She didn't speak, neither did he. There was no anger, no need to prove anything. He simply gave a small nod, acknowledging the weight of the past, but also its release. He walked away. That moment sealed something inside him. Forgiveness, not for her but for himself. Forgiveness for the time he'd lost, the energy he'd spent trying to understand why. He realized now some questions don't need answers. They just need closure. Back at home, he looked at the video file once more, the one that had saved him. He watched it, not to relive the pain, but to remind himself of what discipline looks like under fire, of what it means to stay rooted in who you are when everything around you tries to shake you. And then he deleted it, because the truth had already done its job. It didn't need to be held on to forever. He stood by the window, coffee in hand, breathing in the soft morning light. In that moment, he wasn't thinking about courtrooms or betrayal or what people believed. He was thinking about what comes after the storm: stillness, peace, direction. And with a steady heart, he whispered to himself, "Let them misunderstand you, let them doubt you, but never let them make you forget who you are." Because the greatest vindication is not in proving others wrong. It's in becoming someone so solid, so full of quiet truth that no lie can move you again. Months turned into a year. He wasn't chasing applause, just alignment. Between his values and his actions. Between his inner voice and his outer presence. He started speaking at schools, sharing the story in a way that didn't villainize but humanized. Not to shame anyone, but to elevate the lesson that your calm can be louder than someone else's chaos. After one of these talks, a teenager with shy eyes approached him. "How did you not lose your mind?" the boy asked. "I would have snapped if someone lied about me like that." He smiled gently. "Because if I had," he replied, "then I'd be proving their version of me right. And I never wanted to become the thing I was fighting against." That response didn't just land with the boy. It lingered with him, too. There were still moments where doubt crept in late at night. But those moments didn't last as long anymore. He was learning that healing wasn't an event. It was a practice. And discipline wasn't about punishment. It was about choosing again and again to honor your peace. One day, while volunteering at a youth center, he was handed a file. It was for a kid facing suspension. As he read through it, his breath caught. The last name, the address. The child was the son of the woman who had lied in court years ago. It would have been easy to close the folder and pass it off. But he didn't. He met the boy the next day, 15 years old, angry, guarded, but not beyond reach. "I'm not here to judge you," he said. "I've sat in a courtroom too. I've been misunderstood too." The boy's eyes shifted, just slightly, enough to see that something had landed. Week by week they talked, not about the past, not even about his mother, but about choices, anger, respect, control, purpose. And slowly, the boy softened. This wasn't a movie. There was no dramatic, a reunion, no apology scene. But something more powerful happened. A cycle quietly broke, not through revenge, but through grace, structure, and presence. He never told the boy who he was. He didn't need to. Some battles are better won in silence. Eventually, that boy became a mentor himself. Years later, he would tell someone else, "There was this man. He didn't preach. He just saw me. And that changed everything." Back at home, the man kept his life simple. He read more, spoke less, took walks without his phone. He made time for reflection, not because he had all the answers, but because he understood the cost of ignoring the questions. He stopped chasing justice and started living joy. One evening, as the sky painted itself in soft gold and pink, he received a letter, handwritten, from someone who had sat in that courtroom during his trial years ago. "A juror. I never forgot your face," it read. "The way you stayed calm, it haunted me in the best way. You reminded me that truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quietest person in the room. I hope you're living well." He folded the letter, placed it in his drawer, and looked out the window. Yes, he thought, I am. Because true strength doesn't come from proving yourself to others. It comes from refusing to betray yourself, because the world will test you through lies, misunderstandings, and betrayal. But those are not the final chapters. You get to write those, and when you do, make them about clarity, not chaos, about forgiveness, not fury, about the kind of growth that no courtroom can measure and no accusation can take away. That's the kind of story worth living. That's the kind of legacy worth leaving.